Unfortunately, I have not met too many leaders with very well developed emotional intelligence. That is, I believe, a gap. Leaders, and you will be able to see that their achievement and success is higher than those who are unwilling to look at themselves.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. And today we have with us a very special guest, Gulshan Walia, who is a leadership coach and an HR consultant. Gulshan loves to write and has earned a prestigious top voice recognition on LinkedIn. She has worked with organizations like Texas Instruments, Dell EMC, Biocon, and her clients include Verifone, Ramco, and many other such startups as well. Okay, Gulshan, please welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So Gulshan is here to help us with some of the difficult conversation and those kind of topics. So Gulshan, the first question that I wanted to ask you is you work with a lot of senior executives, right?
Yes.
What are some of the most common problems and challenges that senior executives face and what is your approach to resolve these kind of challenges?
Yeah. I find that emotional intelligence is the biggest challenge that leaders face. If you ask them, they will say, okay, it's growth, it's profit, people management. Of course, all these are there. They are under the stress of producing results, managing uncertainty, managing people. But these are all external challenges. What many of them don't realize is that the key to resolve external challenges lies within them. So I'm a very strong believer of the fact that leadership starts from the self. How self aware are you? Do you know your strengths and weaknesses, your mindset? Do you know which values and principles you stand for? How do you manage difficult emotions? The individual leader has to do a lot of inner work. Now, inner work means the work that we have to do on ourselves before we start working on others and producing external results. This is part of emotional intelligence. Unfortunately, I have not met too many leaders with very well developed emotional intelligence. That is, I believe, a gap. So I work with them on building self awareness. We do 360 feedback, personality questionnaires. Now, some leaders are unwilling to do a 360 feedback. I've met such clients. So if a leader is unwilling to introspect and reflect on his own actions and behaviors, then he doesn't earn the right to tell others to reflect on themselves. So a lot of times leader will talk about them versus me. Could be their boss, their team, the system, etc. Every time the problem is the other person, the outside of them. All and they see this person or the system or everything is the enemy, and all energies are focused on demolishing this enemy outside of them. What about the enemy within? Now, there are few leaders who have the wisdom to see that if they are pointing one finger to the external stuff, there are four fingers pointing at themselves. Now, if I find a leader like this, then it's a great pleasure to work with such a leader, because this is a leader you can really work on and produce magnificent results. This is like a diamond in the rough. So, here the potential of results from coaching are very, very.
It's interesting. So what you're saying is that most of the times people are ready to work on others, but not ready to work on themselves because they just don't see the problem within themselves. They
Yes.
probably think that they are perfect, they are the ones who are in charge, so they have to kind of keep pushing others. But when it comes to self-awareness or let's say finding difficulties with your own self, since they are unwilling to see, they don't recognize it at all.
That's true. That's true. To be a leader, the first thing you have to work is on your own self. And you have to be willing to look at the mirror and say, okay, this is good about me, this is not so good about me. And I will accept that these are not so good things about me. And I'm happy to work on them to improve them if they really impact his job.
So acceptance is the beginning of all the approaches, basically.
Yes.
And as you said, there are also some leaders who are like few, but they are who are ready to self-reflect and they kind of see the value in self-reflection and working on themselves first before trying to change other systems.
Yes, there are leaders, and you will be able to see that their achievement and success is higher than those who are unwilling to look at themselves in the mirror.
And what I understand is what you have said is like since they most of the problem is kind of not self-reflecting as much as they would need to, they always find problems outsideward more, right? That is like things are not happening as per their wish, or things are not changing, probably because there might be some vibes or some energies which they are kind of emitting, and they are themselves not responsible, and they might be affecting their communication, etc.
I think you've put the finger on the right thing. The vibes that they emit via their emotions, via their behavior, via their communication, the tone in which they communicate, the choice of their words, it can have
Right.
either a very positive impact or a very negative impact on the team. And that's how people will respond to you. What is the input you have given to them? And then they will respond only to that. If you're giving good input, garbage in, garbage out. If you give in good input, you'll get good out.
Okay. That's interesting. Very interesting observations there. I think on the flip side of it, there's another question that I would like to ask. For example, suppose a leader is self-aware and kind of, let's say, sensitive. Now, what happens is oftentimes the managers need to give very strong feedback to their reportees, which requires them to have very difficult conversations, right? And sometimes
Yes.
they also might be giving feedback to their senior management, right, to their own managers or bosses, right?
Yeah.
And many people are very rigid in their beliefs. They are very temperamental in their nature, right? Not someone who can take feedback easily. How do
Yes.
you suggest these kind of conversations can be approached so that it doesn't cause too much stress and heartburn, and the managers can have these kind of difficult conversations with a sense of ease?
Right. So, in terms of talking to subordinates, I'll address that part because that's really significant. A lot of leaders are very uncomfortable with difficult conversations. So, I've had times when people have said, "Oh, Gulshan, please, you're the HR person and you take care of this conversation, and we need to tell him that let him go." And they have not even had a feedback conversation with him. So, I think leaders need to be very clear that feedback, difficult conversations will be needed and they need to build the skills to have them. So, first thing to do in such a case is to collect data. Which were the exact situations? What happened in that situation, and what is the impact that it had on the results? Now, supposing you're talking to someone, you can say, the component that you created had too many problems, and you list out those problems and say, because of this
Mhm.
we got poor feedback from the client and we have a risk of losing the client. So you've connected the problem to the impact. Or you can say, we spend
Basically,
a lot of time waiting for you in meetings, and this is going to lower our productivity. And then you gave data. Okay, these are the last 5 meetings you had, and in each one you were there, on an average you were late by 15-20 minutes. So if you share data, then it's difficult for the person to question. And also because if you have looked at data, then you also have a strong ground on which to stand. It's not vague and this one said and so said and she said, he said, and you listen to it. So there's a principle of
what
feedback
you're
called
saying is,
fast. Sorry, go ahead.
what I understand is what you're saying is if you have the discussion based on some data, then it will not go personal, and kind of the discussion will remain
Exactly.
grounded.
You're not getting personal at all. In fact, I mean, that should be the number one thing, that the one thing that you should never do is get
Hmm.
personal. Stick to
Okay.
data and work related problems. I mean, just because you are from a certain part of the country and I'm from the opposite part, if you're doing that, then you're anyway not a great leader. So
Understood.
I'll
And yeah, good.
so I'll talk about
I think we should also cover the part where how to give feedback to the your own managers and bosses, right? How should
yeah,
that
so
be
I'll come
handled?
to that. Let me answer that first. If you're saying, how do you
Hmm.
manage upwards, right? So we are covering a whole
Right.
topic of how to manage upwards, because all the time we think that, we talk about our bosses and how our bosses manage us, but there is an art of
Hmm.
managing upwards as well. I think the first thing in managing upwards is to realize that the boss is also a mere human being. And just as you are a human being, you have good things about you and bad things about you. Similarly, he's also got his own set of flaws. Now, I'm not talking about
Right.
toxic managers here. That's a different category. Toxic manager has to be dealt completely differently. But I'm talking of managers with the normal range of human behavior. Now, what we do is we put that person on a pedestal and our expectations are so high. You're sitting up there, so you can't make any wrong decision. You are not allowed to make a mistake. There's nothing. We just don't give him any leeway for any mistake. We are expecting
Right.
perfection from him, which is impossible. I think you have to
Okay.
go with the mindset. First, that this is also a human being. And yes, there are things about that are great, him that are great, that and there are things that are not all that great. And once you come from that mindset, then if there's something that you feel that you need to address with the manager, you will do it politely, just as you will give feedback downwards. I think similarly, the dignity of the other person, the politeness and the decency in the conversation, these are basic principles. They have to be maintained. Again, this cannot get personal. You can't get personal with your boss. So you might want to again collect data and say, request for a time and say, this is something I wanted to share with you, and I've observed it over this period of time. This is happening. Like, I send you, for example, I submit my report to you, and it takes very long for you to revert. Now, because of that, a lot of my other work gets pending because I can't start without knowing what's the status with this particular report. And I've observed it. I have a couple of dates. These are the 3-4 days I sent you some data and this sent you some reports, and they didn't come through. Is there anything we can do about it so that I can be more productive? A lot of times, the chances are that if you are respectful and you're a good worker, you have developed a good rapport with the manager, he or she will listen to you and will accept the feedback and will say, okay, I'm going to try and do this. Now, unfortunately, if you are with a manager who's full of him, I, me, myself, and has a huge fat ego and believes that he can do no wrong, in that case, you're in a lose-lose kind of situation. You're not going to able to gather much. Overall, over time, you will realize that the only thing to do here is to leave the manager. But that is a toxic manager category. In all other cases, you are likely to make some improvement by having these conversations with your boss.
So, Gulshan, the next question that I wanted to ask is, should managers be friendly with their reportees? Oftentimes, what happens is when you are too friendly with your reportees, right, they start taking you for a ride, and kind of they don't take it you as seriously as they should probably. On the other hand, if you're too strict with your reportees, right, then they kind of conversations become very uneasy, and they sometimes are important, grievances and all the concerns don't flow across you because people are kind of afraid of coming out to you, right? So, should people be friendly with their reportees or not?
This is a brilliant question because so many leaders struggle with it. In my experience of myself, yes. So, and in my experience of leading people, and from what I understand of how I have observed other people, I feel you lead much better with intimacy. Now, what you have to understand is that intimacy in a work context is not the intimacy of a romantic partner or family. Great leaders are not scared of intimacy. So if somebody is getting scared, they need to re-examine what is it about intimacy that scares them. Great leaders understand that intimacy is a crucial part of relationships, and they've learned the art of building intimacy. They build it in a way that enables them to have difficult conversations when needed. So in the work context, intimacy is not sharing of your deepest, darkest secrets. In the work context, intimacy includes a huge amount of approachability. Approachability of a leader is a strong indicator of the intimacy he is willing to extend. If you do not keep yourself approachable, then you're not willing to be intimate, and that has repercussions on performance of the team. How do you strike the right balance? That's what it is all about. Now, what happens is when the subordinates know that they can approach you, they know that you will listen to them, they know that you care about them, they know they can share their vulnerabilities with you, and you will not misuse them, you will not harm them, then they start trusting you. And this is the right kind of intimacy we are looking for. This is healthy intimacy. If a team member is overworked, the good bosses are fully aware and will talk to him and see there are things that they can do to help him. Or if the team member's gotten into trouble, they are happy to guide him and get him out of it, and they're not going to have like a don't care attitude towards it. They are willing to take that risk, and the team will know that this person cares about me. Now, how um, it helps the leader is that if you have built in approachability and caring in your leadership style, and your team trusts you, then even the toughest conversations are going to be easy for you for two reasons two reasons. One is, if you genuinely cared about the person, then if somebody's performance is dropping, obviously you have cared enough to talk to him to figure out what was happening, and you tried to extend support. It's only after that maybe you have come to a point that, okay, no, there's no more that can be done, and probably I'll have to use a different approach. It's still easier because you've gone through that process. You are not feeling, there's no guilt in your heart. You feel very free to then go ahead with this, because I know I've had to, and I had a healthy intimacy with my team, and I had to say let somebody go, but I had slept over that decision, and I was very clear in my heart that I've tried everything from my end, so there was no guilt. The second reason is that within his heart, the other person also knows that you've done your best. You're a well intentioned leader. And this can make the difficult conversation easier. I feel very proud to say that one of the people I had to let go in a difficult situation is actually still in touch with me. That feels very warm and very nice. And I believe actually that the right kind of intimacy actually increases the leader's influencing power. You just have to get it right. That's what it is about.
Basically, what you're saying is that there is nothing wrong in kind of being approachable. That will only help motivate the team faster and higher. And but at the same time, uh, you have to understand that it is in the context of work, right? So when you are approachable, all those discussions should probably be around work and kind of for motivating the team more and more, right? Correct me if I'm wrong anywhere.
You're right, we're talking about a balance. The first thing is that you care about them, and then they are far more willing to listen to you and do what you say.
Thank you, question. That was a very interesting take because a lot of struggle happens in that direction, right? Where sometimes what happens is people simply close themselves, they keep very rigid and kind of formal relationship with the reportees, and there is a sense of the transparency becomes lesser and lesser in such kind of relationships. People do start trusting.
Yeah, so I do not endorse those leadership styles. I think there has to be transparency, there has to be openness. At the same time, you have to communicate in no uncertain terms that performance is the most important thing. I mean, the challenge of leadership is to strike this balance. If you can't strike this balance, then what are you doing in a leadership position? It's expected out of you when you are that high in level. That is what leader. That's the kind of leadership that is expected out of you. You have to step up to that standard.
uh Point taken. So Gulshan, next question is, what are some of the tips that you would like to give to leaders if they want to improve the result and result focus in an organization as well as improve their execution efficiency, how to be better executors basically?
Execution is carrying out a plan, getting results, outcomes, go deep into the how of the plan, and not just leaving it at high five statements in a PPT or a sheet of paper. I love the four disciplines of execution framework that is given in the book by the same name, written by Stephen Covey. The four disciplines, the first one that they talk about is focus on the wildly important goals. These are the goals that drive your vision, they make a huge difference, they take you to a new level. And if you fail on these, it means that everything else that you have accomplished is probably meaningless. For example, if your biggest goal could be market share, and then you say, oh, it's also profit. Now, what if there is a conflict between the two? Are you clear? Which one will you choose? You need to be very certain about what your priorities are. The second discipline is act on your lead measures. There are two kinds of metrics, lead measures and lag measures. Now, lead measures are about effort, and lag measures are about results. So, lead measures will tell you what are the activities that you really need to do to get to the end results. For example, you have a software that needs to be done. So, and you say it needs to be done within 6 months, and it needs to have these particular features. So only at the end of 6 months will you come to know whether this is done or not. And so that is lag. But within those 6 months, you need to create metrics which you will track, which will tell you that you are moving in the right direction. For example, you will say at all times we must have uh, team availability of more than 75%, or we should never have a bug percentage, a bug rate of more than 20%. So these things become important. Then we need a who does what by when list. I call it the 3W formula for execution. It's a to do list. Project schedules are all to do lists at their core. Every rocket launched in space has million to do lists, and it says everything that needs to be done, every task, subtask, who does what by when, and who are the people responsible and accountable for it. So leaders must create a culture of who does what by when. They must insist on these plans and review them regularly. So this will turbocharge execution. The third discipline is create a compelling scoreboard, or what we call a dashboard. Keep it visible. Track the metrics, both lead and lag, and review it regularly. The fourth discipline is maintaining a cadence of accountability, which includes highlighting successes, and it also includes analyzing failures and problems and finding solutions. Now, the important part of maintaining accountability is that we don't let people get away with non performance. Now, a lot of leaders struggle to confront subordinates, and that's a problem. As a leader, you must be able to really communicate strongly that performance is non-performance is unacceptable.
And the next question that I wanted to ask is like, what are some of the readings or trainings that you would want to recommend to managers to increase their self-confidence and productivity?
There are endless resources, trainings, online case courses, books that are available on leadership development. The person really must have a desire to learn. So I'm listing out four books here. The first one is Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I think this book is a Bible, and if you can implement even 50% of what is written in the book, you are sorted out for life. Second book is What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School by Mark McCormack. And this is a kind of a book for street smartness. And it's been written by people who've been there, out there in their jobs and have distilled their wisdom from what they've learned on the job. The third one is First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham. And finally, the fourth book is Emotionally Intelligent Manager by Caruso and Salovey.
Thank you, Gulshan. Thank you for the time. It was great conversation. There were great insights in this conversation. We have learned a lot. I think it would be useful to all the managers as well as to the people who want to become managers.
So, thank you, Pradeep, for this podcast. I really had a great time. I hope that all of you have also found it useful.